he came in, he's incredible, British man, and he came in and he said, okay, you're all here. You're all our final choices. We're going to have to choose one of each. And there's an auditorium full of executives waiting for each of our performances. And he goes, they're going to know in the first 15 seconds whether or not it's you. And then he said, so just, go for it. And he leaves the room. Every other person in the room started freaking out. They were like, what do you mean? I mean, what does that mean? Like, they don't care how I do the scene, or they don't care. And I was like, and I kind of sat back and I was like, oh, awesome. That's awesome. That means I can only be me, because the only thing they're going to see in that first 15 seconds is me.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Wow, what a chat. Today's guest is an absolute boss, the real deal. She's super conscious, very present, ridiculously empowering and empathetic. She has such a beautiful, kind energy about her and genuinely wants the world to be a better place, which I think is epic. And she actually walks the talk. It's mesmerizing. I could have spoken to her for many more hours about all things life. I love this chat. I think you will too. Okay, I'll stop fangirling. Just a heads up in case you aren't aware, there is a writers and actors strike going on at the moment. This interview was recorded prior to the strike. We hope this can be resolved quickly and fairly. Okay, so let's get into it. Cassidy Freeman is a talented and versatile actress as well as a producer who currently stars as Amber Gemstone in HBO's hit series The Righteous Gemstones, opposite creator Danny McBride, John Goodman and Adam Devine, to name a few. I love this show. I've been binge watching it. Watch it so I can watch a fourth season. Cassidy's also well known for starring as Cady Longmire in Longmire on Netflix, and Tess Mercer in CW's superhero drama SMALLVILLE. She's also appeared on series such as Once Upon a Time, The Vampire Diaries, Doubt, and Cold Case. Cassidy also co-executive produced and starred in the horror thriller YELLOWBRICKROAD, as well as an indie feature CORTEZ, both which premiered at Slamdance. Additional film credits include Forever Purge, Don't Look Back, Finishing the Game, an indie feature, Brahmin Bulls. On stage, Cassidy has appeared in Anthony Minghella's Cigarettes and Chocolate in New York City at the Atlantic Stage 2 and the Maids at the Moth Theatre. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot and chat about creative journeys and authenticity, her band, The Real Decoy, manifestation, journaling, yoga and meditation, being Ish, The Righteous Gemstones, letting go of agents, getting it right, and lucid dreaming. Before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I find it adds a new element and dynamic to these chats. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny and Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode. I'd love to know about The Real Decoy, if I pronounced that correctly, and how you started this family band.
I have to say you did pronounce it correctly, and so few people do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they like to say The Real Decoy.
I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah, you should be.
Thank you.
The Real Decoy is a band that I played in. I'm using the past tense because we don't really play together anymore. And it consisted of my brother and our dear friend from college, Andy Mitten, who is a writer and a music composer and just an all-around genius. And we all went to college together, although years apart. And then when we went to Los Angeles, when you're in your 20s trying to make it in Los Angeles, you have a lot of free time because you're not working. So we decided just to rent a room like near a freeway and make a lot of noise, and then take that noise to bars. It was really fun.
That is really cool. And would you guys consider bringing the band back?
I mean, I definitely would. We've all sort of, Andy moved to the East Coast of the United States, and he has 2 kids, and my brother has 2 kids, and I have a kid, and so now we're a little tethered to our families. But I would definitely be down for a reunion.
You know what you could do, and don't get me into trouble, just all 3 of you just say you've got like work, and then just spend the weekend and like rent out a room like you did previously, and just say work was a mate, because it is work as well as a hobby.
It is work. Yeah, absolutely is a work. I think we should do that.
Agreed. And so you've obviously, I know that were you singing in the band?
Yes.
So I'd love to know, what was it that drew you to this band, and what did it do for your soul?
Well, honestly, what drew me to this band was my brother, and just being able to collaborate with him. He and I collaborate in a lot of ways. He's sort of my twin, born 5 years before me, in that we have been best friends since I was born.
Nice.
And I didn't have any other big offers. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll choose this band because no one else is knocking down my door. And what it did for my soul, that's a great question. In college, I sang opera and I sang a cappella. And I noticed that when something was going wrong, whether it was like I got a bad grade or a teacher was mean to me or I had a breakup or something happened in college, every time I went to rehearsal to sing, I felt better. And I think there's something biological in that, like the release, like the vibration in your body. And then this is why people hum and chant and and all those things. And so it is, I think, something that releases really good feelings in your body, whatever biological things it releases. So being able to be in Los Angeles and feel the consistent rejection of being an actor, being able to go to a room and scream or sing was very therapeutic. So fed my soul. It also challenged me to have a sense of self-worth or confidence that maybe I didn't have. I also played piano in the band, and I will say I played it horribly because I'm very insecure about my ability to play it.
I'm sure you were very good.
And so debatable. But we'll talk about that later. It forced me to show up to something that I wasn't intrinsically great at. And that I think is really important, to do things that you're not necessarily good at.
Great.
I think that builds character.
I love that. And the only example that springs to mind for me is I did improv, and very long story short, I never did any form of performing. And there was a bit of fear. I wanted to do it to improve my comedy. But I was so impressed with half the class. I've spoken about this before, so I won't dive too much into it, because I'm sure 1,000 people have spoken to you about improv as well over the years, where half the class had similar aspirations to me, and then the other class had like full-blown anxiety, per their words. And to see the transformation of actually getting up there, and I'm so proud. I didn't even know who they were. To see the transformation of ownership, self-confidence, and the 20 other positive emotions just in a short amount of time, it actually changed my perspective on getting up and fear, because I never had a relationship with fear. And now you're talking about like ownership and personal power and all of that stuff. To actually get up on stage, for most people, is the scariest thing ever. So I'm wondering, what made you actually want to get up and perform? I know we spoke about what it does for your soul and the releasing, but to get up can be so scary, and we can let that cloud us.
We absolutely can let it cloud us. And I actually want to like make a distinction between 2 different types of performing. So I've been on stage as an actor since I was like 7 years old. I used to perform in operas when I was a kid in Chicago. And there was something really freeing about getting on stage and being someone else, right? Like it was up to me to be there and to perform, but at the end of the day, I wasn't really projecting myself. And I used to think, when we started playing music live, how fearless, how incredible musicians were, because they weren't only getting on stage and performing, they were being a version of themselves. I guess we're all a version of themselves, but they're being themselves. There's no character to kind of hide behind. So those two, I find it harder to get up in front of a group of people. Like my old college, my old college.
Sorry.
Sorry, God damn it. Oh, I did it again. God damn it. Pardon me.
Yes.
I'm going to put do not disturb on, and then I'm going to come back to you. Okay, great. I'm not sorry. Sorry,
Good.
not sorry. My college invited me to come back and speak to the graduating class maybe a decade ago. It was a great honor. And they were like, you have to write a speech and it has to be like 10 minutes. And so I wrote something and then I recorded myself saying it and it was like 2.5 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be terrifying. It was so much harder for me to do that than it was for me to go in front of a room full of executives and play a character. And I can't honestly tell you if that's because of the difference of type of performing or if I was just so much more rehearsed at doing the latter. But it's doing something that's really hard. And I think it's really cool that you saw other people doing it, because I think that's what reminds us that none of us are perfect and none of us are born with these abilities. There's something we have to like have courage and then mutual support, right? Like you weren't in the audience going like, what a fucking idiot. You know, you were like, dang, like way to get up there. You had like some appreciation for that. And I think that's part of it is being able to be an idiot in front of other people or show your ass, as it were. Just like go for it and find that attractive, find that something to look up to.
It is the greatest thing in the world. I was in an environment, this is like a decade ago, where if you inverted commas failed or you got up and you were seen as an idiot or you said something stupid, you'd be judged. And none of us, you know how shame works. It doesn't flow well with humans. But then in, for example, this improv group, to just get up and you could say the dumbest thing, be not funny. You could literally not say anything. And people are like, well, you got up. And to me, that's what life should be about, where it doesn't matter what necessarily the end result is. If you tried and you gave it 100%, the journey in itself is so much more important and you learn so much more. And so it sounds like you've gone on a big journey, and we'll get into some of the stuff you've learned along the way. But what actually made you want to get up? And, you weren't just doing this like one-off. You're actually, performing a fair bit with the family band, if you want to call it that. You actually getting up and you decided to take, I don't know if the right word's ownership, but you actually got up there and you did it.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like 80% of it was my brother telling me I had to. And 20% of it was like, you got to do things that scare you. Yeah. But I've always loved being on stage. I've always loved that rush. Not because I like the applause. I mean, that's nice, but there's just something so, it's almost physical that like that whole journey you go through where you're preparing, even if it's improv, you're preparing to go on stage, even though you don't know what you're going to say. Right. Mm. But you're mentally and physically preparing to be in front of people. And then there's that like 10 to 4 minutes before you go on when you're like, I either need to throw up, like take a shot, I don't know, like punch something. And then that's actually, my husband once told me that's called eustress. That's like that. It's like good stress. Eustress.
Interesting.
It's like not bad stress. It's the stress that prepares us. It's the stress that actually like does good things for our body. And then, I was trained in this more because I did theater for so long until I got into film and television, because it's a very different beast in this preparation. Yep. But once you get on stage, like in essence, the train has left the station, right? And nothing can save you. And there's something really present and in the moment about that. I think I grew up in a family that was really smart. My parents are huge overachievers, as are my brothers. And I'm the youngest. And so there was something really attractive about a place where you couldn't do wrong as long as you showed up.
Oh.
So there was no right or wrong on stage. I mean, you could forget a line, but then you would like make it work, or you wouldn't know what you were going to say, but you were going to improv your way through it. And there was just something so refreshing about that I couldn't fuck it up. Totally.
Interesting, because my
Mhm.
parents are also high achievers in the sense as well. I know your parents were lawyers as well. So do you think it was that freedom of potentially like an upbringing where there's kind of like right or wrong, and then to do something which is so outside of kind of your family environment? I know your brothers do acting or they're in the space as well.
Mhm.
Was it something about that to just the freedom to just explore?
Yeah, I think so. I think we all went to a private high school, or from kindergarten through high school, where it was, high expectations. And so as we're doing like AP calculus, the place where I really felt free and like I was having fun, that sort of, people say like, when are you unconscious, right? Like when are you doing something where you're just like, ah, I could do this forever. It's not work, it's life.
Mm.
And that was anytime I was performing, dancing, singing, acting, because it just felt alive. It didn't feel like something I had to memorize and regurgitate and learn. It was something that I had to like, and it was very action based. But it was also something I had to learn. Like you become better at all those things when you learn about yourself too.
Yes.
And so that was exciting to me.
I want to get into it because I've heard you on a lot of podcasts about your journey or transformations along the way. But before I forget about this, you mentioned the piano and it was very scary for you. And you said that we'd
Yeah.
like pigeonhole it. So I want to know kind of the self-confidence side from there, or what actually made you want to do that? Because it sounds like there was a bit of a journey there as well.
Yeah. I mean, in the band, I was playing a keyboard, kind of like an electronic
Yep.
thing. My mother played the piano. She was one of those people that would be very self-deprecating and be like, "Oh, I don't really know how to play this. I mean, just put it up there. I'll see if I can do it." And then she would sight read. Like, yeah, exactly. And you're like, "Wait, what?
You're a pro.
You you just sight read like Bach. Like, what's happening?" Um, and then she'd shuff you off later and be like, "Oh, no big deal." It was a
I
huge
love that.
deal.
Oh, that's so good.
And so very modest, but very talented. And it was an instrument that felt a little forced upon me as a kid. So I ended up playing the saxophone and singing, and that felt, I mean, I had to play. I went to the kind of school where there were like 9 kids there. So you had to do everything. Like it wasn't a big high school where you had to like choose your path. You were a football person. You
That
played
is
the cello.
so good. I love that. That's way better.
Yeah.
Or in my
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of like ish at everything because jack of all trades, master of none. But I think it made me a better person, and I think it made me more empathetic and able to see how hard. When I see a quartet get up on stage and play, and someone hits a wrong note, I'm not sitting there going like, "God, so shitty." I'm like, "Dang,
Yeah.
that's hard." What they're doing is hard. So that, piano is just, I think it's an instrument that you have to spend, what do they say? You have to spend 10,000 hours doing something before
Yep.
before you've mastered it. I haven't reached 1,000 hours on the piano. So, people always say things like, "Oh, I wish I played the piano." And it's like, well, then do it, but it takes time. And so I played that instrument because that's what was needed for the band. But I continued to show up and do it, even though it was scary because I wanted to challenge myself.
That's very cool. I also want to know, we've spoken about, a little bit about the upbringing, but actually willing to get up and give it a go and knock the fear to the side. Because especially as an actor, there's a lot of fear. Fear in general being, oh, I might not get this role. I've been rejected 100 times, blah, 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 blah. But then also speaking to a few people on the podcast, there can be a fear of, I'm not like the character that everyone likes me as. I'm completely different. And that can really play mind games with us because we feel we have to be someone else. But getting to, learn a little bit about your journey, it sounds like, or at least now you've always been very true to yourself, very authentic, and you put in a lot of work to get to where you are. I'm just very curious where that drive comes to be you, because it can be scary not to be you. And a lot of people don't want to be themselves for various reasons.
Sure. I think early on in acting, I really liked not being me. I think it was fun to play a different character. I also, stage kind of can lend itself sometimes to bigger characters that aren't as totally relatable. especially musicals and operas, and that's what I was doing a lot of. But I went to a school, I got to Los Angeles and I was very serious. And I went to this, I was doing it, my brother ran a theater company and we did this summer play, and someone saw me in the play, came up, my friend Jim Neeb, who's still a friend, and he came up to me afterwards and I'd never met him. And he said, I'm not a creep, I'm not being weird, but you're very talented and I think you should go to this school, Playhouse West.
Oh, nice.
And you just go and you like audit a class and then you talk to the teacher afterwards. And I went and I audited the class, and I went up to the teacher afterwards, and I had like a fucking binder of like my resumes and the songs I can sing and the Shakespeare monologues I can do. And I was like very serious with him. And he looked at me and he was like, can you throw all of that out the window and just like show up here and just be you? And it was through that school. It was a cool school. It wasn't like a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year program. It was like you paid monthly and you came when you could. And then if you got a job, you took some time off and then you came back. It was more like a gym membership
Oh, I love
than
that.
it was. Yeah. So it like really, it supported young actors working. It supported like knowing that you're never totally done with learning. You're never done with school. You can keep going back. I would go shoot series like seasons of Smallville and then come back and go back to this school for 2 months while I was home, because I thought, gosh, what a great way to like sharpen the tools, to stay present, to stay in it. And that was where I really learned that I was never playing completely another person. I was always playing myself, a version of myself, or how I would act a lot of times in those. It has to have, every part has to have a part of you in it. Why do we go back and watch the same plays, right? Like, why do we watch Romeo and Juliet over and over again? We know they die. We do it because we want to see that person play Romeo, and that's going to have a different effect on us as an audience member. And I realized that I was so much more powerful if I incorporated my emotions, what made me feel the way this character might feel, along with what was written on the page or the description of the character.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And I've written, I think, 20 points as you were speaking. I don't even know where to start. I'm just going to word vomit and we'll see where we go.
Great. Okay. Yeah.
First of all, I love that. I love that school because, you know, the goal is to work, but also it's got an environment where once you've got work, you can still come back. Where I was just having this conversation with someone the other day. I used to do accounting and now I'm doing this in screenwriting. And kind of the goal was, it wasn't directly said to us, but it was more indirect, where everyone, once they like got their accounting degrees or their commerce degrees, were like, we're done studying. We don't want to ever study again. But that's not what life is, you know. Life is in my perspective, you know, we've got a lot of lessons to learn, or if we choose to do that. And, you know, Smallville at the time, for example, the biggest show, like it's an enormous show, and you know, you can let the ego go, I'm working on this top show, and you can go, I don't need to study, I've done this. But then to actually come back is so awesome, because it shows that, you know, there's longevity, you're doing it for yourself, but then also you're exploring emotions within yourself, which I'm not an actor by any means. I have done it, but just the ability to explore different sides of yourself is just the most beautiful thing. And you had it all in that environment. So yeah, I'm not surprised from you, but I find that so awesome, given what we've just said in the circumstances, that you've come back to study, especially when you got a show like that and you can go, you know what, I've done it. So has it always been something where you're like, you know what, not only do I want to do this for the long haul, but I also want to explore parts of myself and grow and evolve? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what was...
No, and not only do you want to keep, not only are we like an endless well, but we change. The things that affected me at 25 do not affect me now in the same way. And I have a whole new book of things that affect me because of what I've experienced in that time. So I think you have to stay present with what affects you, what you care about, because those are the things that are going to make you tap into your personal emotional self. And when you can do that, then you can paint all these other characters with your palette and give it real authentic feeling. You know, when you watch someone on screen and you're like, oh yeah, they produce tears, or on stage, like, oh yeah, they're sad. And then you have those people where they may not even shed a tear, but they're having a moment so authentic and real that you cry. They always say that if you on stage, if you cry and the audience doesn't cry, you didn't do it right. If you cry and they cry, okay. But if you don't cry and they cry, you've really done something.
That's such a nice perspective. You know, there are movies where, you know, this, and it's not even live. You see a movie and you're like, the hairs on your
Yeah.
arms move, and you just, you know, your spider sense is tingling, like, wow, what a performance.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's often from actors that we don't even recognize, right? Sometimes there are some actors that have just figured this out, and you know, Laura Linney is one of them. I can watch that woman do anything, and I'm just in awe. But I love it when you find these moments from people you may not even recognize, and they're just, you don't even know why. And it may not be the most attractive character or the lead character or whatever. It's this humanness that whenever people go to LA and they go, oh, I gotta lose weight, I gotta bleach my teeth, I gotta dye my hair, I got, you know, whatever outside thing they feel like they have to do to themselves. I always think like, no, you already have it. You don't have to fit into, you just need to find more of you. That's what's going to be attractive. Hopefully.
I want to dive deep in this because in all areas of life, but acting seems to really like hone in on it. You think we need to be someone else. What do they want? How do I need to be perceived? All of that stuff. And I feel like, you know, with acting, it's kind of on steroids that when people master that, then not only is their career better, but their life is better. And, you know, happy life, happy career in a sense, not the other way around necessarily.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering, when did you, it's not when, because it would have been an experience, it would have happened along the way, but realize that you can be successful being you? Because at some level, most of the guests have spoken about, they've always felt they had to be someone else, or do this, or you mentioned the hair, or the new things that are out there. So has this been something conscious, or have you always been like this? Are there moments in your life, or just something you figured out?
No, I wouldn't even say I'm 100% like that now. I'd say this is like a constant reminding, because I think it's really easy to look back in the day before COVID, when we would go into rooms and audition. It's so, and I don't know if you saw La La Land, but there's this scene in that where she walks into a room and there's like 20 of her. That's what it's like. You walk into a room and there's all these people waiting, and you have like maybe 20 or 30 minutes before you're going to go in for the audition, and you have like literally you have to put blinders on and like do something else, because your mind will just go like, oh, she's prettier, oh god, I should have worn a sweater more like that, like all the things your brain is trying to compare. And you know, it's funny, I don't know when it happened. I think it happens along the way. There have been some, you know, I've taken a myriad of what would they be called, like workshops or things where you go in and you do a scene and you get feedback, you know, whether that was in class or not. Playhouse West helped a lot too, because we didn't, people didn't show up like in hair and makeup to go to this class. Like it was raw. And our teacher, Robert Carnegie, would fully stop a scene if he thought we were faking it, if he thought we were dialing it in. He would stop, and then like your turn, that class was over. So it was very rehearsed, but there was, it was like, he would just stop it and he'd be like, okay, we got to talk about this. Like, what's going on? Why haven't you dropped into this? Like, what do you need? You know, and we would all watch it as a class. We'd watch everyone's scenes. And it was, like you said, in your improv, to be able to see other people get up there and do it. So not only were we learning by doing, but we were learning by watching. And I can remember I can remember one instance where I was testing for a pilot. Do you know what a test is? A test is when like you go in.
But the audience might not, so sorry for cutting you out.
Did you just say the S word?
Oh my goodness. I apologize. Can I say that? I don't even know I made the
No, you can't say any of it. You're perfect.
You called me.
There was this. No, it's so good. I remember particularly this instance where I was very young. I had only done, I think, like one guest star in my film and television career, and I was testing for this pilot for the CW. And it was a show that never went. It was called Austin Golden Hour, and it was about surgeons. And I was testing for like the second biggest part, which I didn't really get at that point in my career. I didn't understand what a great opportunity this was, but I was stoked to do it. I wasn't being flippant. But I went in there and, they corral us all into a room and, we have to wait. It's just anxiety. Like every part before you perform is anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
And we're in this room and one of our producers, this guy named Mal Young, he came in, he's incredible, British man. And he came in and he said, okay, you're all here. You're all our final choices. We're going to have to choose one of each. And there's an auditorium full of executives waiting for each of our performances.
Wow.
And he goes, they're going to know in the first 15 seconds whether or not it's you. And then he said, so just, go for it. And he leaves the room. Every other person in the room started freaking out. They were like, what do you mean? I mean, what does that mean? Like, they don't care how I do the scene, or they don't care. And I was like, and I kind of sat back and I was like, oh, awesome. That's awesome. That means I can only be me, because the only thing they're going to see in that first 15 seconds is me. So it's either me or it's not me. And I don't have a lot of control over that. So just be as you can be. That was one instance I remembered, but I think it's a constant reminding of oneself that the things you can change about yourself, the things that someone, I had shitty managers early in my career that would tell me all the things that managers tell young women in Hollywood. And it just never rang true to me. So I didn't do them.
You mentioned that you were a very serious actor coming in. First of all, that's amazing advice by that British dude, because that's, it doesn't just apply to acting. People kind of know or they don't know. But
yeah,
also,
what's that book? Blink? Isn't there a book about that?
Someone's
Malcolm,
but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll look that up later.
We'll add it to the homework list. But also, you're coming, you're new to, Hollywood, and there are rules, or maybe there are more rules of the game, and someone who is, potentially seen as like a gatekeeper or someone more senior than you as a manager, and they're telling you various things, and that can be they can, kind of attack our insecurities as well. Everyone would be like this. And then to kind of realize like, I don't really need to do that. That's also very rare. And I know that there was a story where you parted ways with your agent or manager at the time when I think you had just come to Hollywood, or there was a few months, or you'll correct me. And it was during the writer's strike. And that could be really scary. You could like beg the manager or agent, please, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll cut my hair. I'll gain or lose 100 kilos. But instead of, giving in, you said, you know what, this isn't for me. And then you went off, and I'll let you tell the rest of the story. But I think that's so awesome that you kind of had that knowing within you that you don't need like second best, or even though that sounds like 10th best, but you're like, you know what, I'm going to do me.
Yeah, well, because that's all you can do at the end of the day, right? Like, yeah, we can, if a part asks you to lose or gain weight, if a part asks you to put on age makeup or cut your hair, great. But at the end of the day, all you can be is you. And someone asking you to change those things about you is actually insecure about their own ability to sell you or to pitch you or to get you out there. It's not actually about you. And you don't want people in your corner that think that you're not already it. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, right? Like, I'm not going to book every role. It's just impossible. There are roles that just aren't for me. But I can be in the running if I'm being authentic. I can, and a lot of times they don't even know what they're looking for. They think they know, but they don't know. What they're really looking for is someone who's authentic and someone who makes them think and feel. But yeah, I was with a manager that didn't really believe in me, and I don't even know why she was repping me. But and it's scary to let go of the one thing you think you have. But at the end of the day, they get you opportunities, but they don't get you the part. And so and they have to believe in you. It's better. I mean, why would you date someone that doesn't like you? It's like, it's a relationship, right? It's like, are you into me? Or are you not into me? Because if you're not into me, I'll go find someone that is into me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was only weeks after that I got my first big part, which was that pilot that I was speaking of.
Interesting. But it also
Mhm.
on that end, because, you know, money as well. There's the fear of the career, but there's also the fear of money. This is a person that it can connect you with money. And when we don't have a lot of it, the mind, we've seen it in, you know, the best of us, you know, money can kind of understandably because we need to survive. But even just from that side to go, you know what, this isn't a right match. And I think it's so important because especially kind of like when there's gatekeepers to a degree, we
Mm.
think that we need them and we kind of, you know, we give up a little bit of our power each time. The manager might say something and you're like, well, I need, and we make excuses for their behavior. We've got people like this in all aspects of our life.
Sure
Oh,
do.
but they need
Yeah,
to
we
do
do.
this. We give a little bit of our power. Oh, they need to do this. Then
Mhm.
it hits a point where you're like, I've just given myself up entirely. But you like,
Mm.
you cut it at a certain point and you realize that, which is really awesome because this is life advice, that you need people in your circle that believe in you. And it doesn't mean you don't need
Yeah.
to do work or grow and improve, but it means they
Right.
accept you for being you. And that's what that is, you know, friends, you know, people call it our tribe or whatever you want to. When we've got a team like that, whether it's our family, friends, business, everything is so much easier, especially when the hard times come. It's so much
Mhm.
easier to navigate because we've got people that actually see you and feel you as you are, which I think is
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point about money because I think a lot of creatives, whether it's acting or something else, they put a lot of pressure on their craft.
Mm.
And if their craft is fueled by creativity, it's not possible. You cannot go into an audition going, this part's going to get me my rent. And, you know, they can smell it on you. It's just thirst. And it's like, there's no judgment. I know we've all been there where we're like, well, I could really use this. Like, I really need this break, whatever it is. But you have to find a way to go in and release that expectation or release that need because it's just not it will never creatively feed whatever you're doing if there is a sense of panic behind it.
Agreed. And going back to what you said, like boyfriend or girlfriend, for example, if one is trying to pursue the other one and they're just like, please date me, please, you know, it's repelling, it's off-putting. So
Yeah, he's
you
just
know,
not that into you.
yeah, just
Let it
just
go.
chill. Like, thank you, but no.
But
So
we can't see it sometimes, right? Like
yeah,
we think they're the only person in the world, or we think this is the only job in the world, and it's just not. Also, I had a friend that used to encourage me to reflect a lot, to reflect on when are times that I felt really like in the groove, in the zone, whatever you want to call it, like when you in flow, when you felt like unconscious when things are just working for you. What were you doing? Were you dyeing your hair and dieting, or were you like fully invested in what you were doing and just eye on the prize and continuing to fill your life with people and things that fed you versus things that made you feel inadequate?
okay, we can talk about this for 100 hours. I've
Yeah,
heard a
let's
quote
move
of
on.
yours where you're very, I just can't find it on me, but you're very big on that your life needs to be going well, and then that will add to your career. Because if the life's not going well, then you're meant to live a whole life. I can see you smiling. What sprung to mind?
Yeah, no, I mean, I like your interpretation. Going well versus like your life, because it's not
Yes.
always going to go well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like you just have to
Yeah.
like your life.
And
But
I
yes, continue.
no, I just think that's really important because, you know, you mentioned being a serious actor at the start, and a lot of people think that you can only be happy or fulfilled or whatever if you're doing the thing. And I
Right,
know that I've gone, once I sell my big TV show and I'm the showrunner, then my life can be amazing,
right,
which is not
right.
helpful whatsoever. You need to be in the moment, allow for that space.
Mm,
So then when that you actually can attract it, you need to attract it now before it'll happen later. And
yeah,
we, to some degrees, we think that once we get the thing, then we can allow ourselves to have fun or play or enjoy our life. But in my experience, that's been very damaging. So I'd like to
yeah.
know about from the acting side, because you mentioned you're a serious actor. Yeah, in terms of
I'm laughing at myself. I'm laughing at 22-year-old me. And when I say I took myself very seriously.
yeah,
I think because of my upbringing, I had a very strong sense of right versus wrong. I'll give you a short example. in college, there was this class. I went to Middlebury College, and Doug Sprigg was a director and a teacher, and he taught this class called Acting 3, which was by the students called Crying for Credit. It was basically the class where you would get in touch with your emotional self. He asked us to find a monologue in any play, anywhere, that spoke to us, and then we had to write him sort of like however much we wanted to share, but a brief emotional history. Did we come from a broken home? Did we have, however much of your trauma you wanted to share with him? My dog died when I was 12 and it was really awful, whatever the thing, right? Give him sort of a history. And he would keep that private, but he might bring up parts of it in class. So you had to be willing to see that. So anyway, I choose this monologue from the play Fences, which I don't know if you've ever seen it or heard of it. It became a movie as well, which was great. I chose a monologue by like a 50-year-old Black woman, something that I think my teacher was confused as to why I related to it, because the things that she was going through in the play weren't necessarily things that I would be going through as a 19 or 20-year-old student.
Yeah.
And so I did the monologue, and then he questioned me. He said, why did you choose this monologue? And I went, well, I wanted to do it right. Like I just wanted to do a good job, is what I said. And he said, what's your obsession with right versus wrong? And I just lost it. Like couldn't talk for a good 3 or 4 minutes because I was crying so hard. He just nailed it in a weird way. And so I don't, there's just something so interesting when you get called on what you think is right, what you think is wrong, who you really are at your core when you can be just yourself.
Yeah.
So life, how do you enjoy your life? If you're constantly trying to achieve something that you think you're not good enough for, focusing on where you're lacking, that's going to bleed into the rest of your life. And so even if it's something like, I had another good friend tell me, I started in LA, it's hard. You're working, you're auditioning, you're doing stuff. And I felt there was a lack of gratitude. And so I started volunteering at like homeless shelters. Not because I wanted to compare myself to people who weren't as fortunate as I am. It's not that. It was that I wanted to be of service. I wanted to help people. I wanted to be functional, and I wanted to do something, quote, right. But in doing that, it really brings you back to the humanity of what you're doing. Look, we're not saving lives. Maybe we're saving lives. Hopefully we're saving lives emotionally, but we're not brain surgeons. You know what I mean? Like, this is all supposed to have an element of fun to it, and ease. And I think if you can find that in other parts of your life, when so much of this business is not full of ease, that will bleed into what you're doing.
That
hopefully
is so awesome. I want to talk about gratitude, but also just to go to an environment, for example, working at the homeless shelter, it takes you away from the seriousness of what you're trying to achieve as well. And it gives you space to realize it's not all. Well, this is not all it is. That is absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to be exploring that in my mind afterwards. But
yeah, I also think as actors and screenwriters, and there's not a lot of arts like this where we are solo, right? Like, if you're a cello player, you can practice by yourself, but you need to go play with the band, right? Like, because of COVID, because of technology, because we can literally be in our apartments and order everything to our door, because we don't have to interact with people, even like a barista. Like, I missed that during COVID. I missed going to my coffee shop and getting my coffee and saying hi to Chris. And, I don't know Chris, but I know Chris, and I just wanted to like have that interaction. We lose that humanity when we are in a room writing all day. And whether it's a homeless shelter, whether it's a job that you quote don't need, but you get to interact, I just think it's really important to stay with people so that you remember what it's like to be conversational, to be, I don't know, to be normal.
when you write your best-selling book and do your TED Talk, I want to
Yes.
explore this aspect of gratitude because I wouldn't be someone that wasn't thinking like this, but I definitely would have been, oh, this happened to me. How can you see the positives and the negatives? And then it's been a long journey where now, pretty quickly, depending on the situation, I go, oh, I'm grateful that happened.
Right.
There's so many examples that spring to mind, but we'll see where we go. Where, even with the
Right.
screenwriting deal that I almost had, where I was like, this is going to be my big break, and it didn't go ahead.
Mhm.
And to this day, it's probably the thing I'm most grateful for because I'm not working, talking about your manager's story. That would
Right.
have just been a disaster in terms of, there's some similar attributes which we don't need to get into, but some toxic behavior. And
Mhm.
even going back to where, you give a little bit of, and then you defend a little bit of yourself, oh, they just need to do this. They're the gatekeepers. And then you keep
Right.
giving, and then you find that you have to like defend them because, they're the gatekeepers. And
Right.
anyway, long story short, I'm just so grateful that experience didn't go ahead because it's allowed for room for me to explore this screenplay in other areas, for example. But,
Right.
in the moment, we're talking about even like with your manager, being grateful that those situations didn't go further has been a game changer for me because I was very black and white. It happened or it didn't happen. And now with
Right.
time, it's always with time, don't get me wrong, to be able to say,
Yeah.
you know what, I'm grateful, or what did I learn from this, or what is at least one positive I can get from this experience, or what did it teach me about myself? That has completely changed my outlook in life. And I'm definitely now, more times than not, what's the glass?
Half
Full or
full.
half? I can't even speak English, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
And I think it's very important
Well,
because,
and I got to tell you, you're probably a lot more likable too
oh yeah,
when you're exercising that. In that people that are just doomsday, you can feel that shit, man.
mm,
And you're just like, man, I mean,
so
look,
heavy.
we all need friends we can go stitch and bitch to, right? We all need friends we can go tell
Preach, I love
everything
it.
to and be like, can you believe this again?
Yep.
But, on a whole, someone who's always like that to everyone is not even attracting opportunities, whether they be personal or professional. And
Right.
look, sometimes I don't want to belittle people either. Sometimes people truly are on the fucking bottom rung of their life, right? Whether they really are in that they're living in their car or they're living on the street, or they really are in that they don't have money and they need whatever it is. The practice of even finding like three things to be grateful for. That could be like, I'm grateful for the color blue because I really like it. You know, even that shifts our energy a little bit,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
I'm grateful that I'm grateful that it's raining today. I'm grateful that, whatever, fill in the blank. They can be simple pieces of gratitude. And then to be able to go further, like you're speaking of, and say, man, this complex situation that didn't pan out the way I wanted it to. What can I glean from that? What can I deduce from that has actually served me rather than not? And it does take time because hindsight is a
Definitely. Yeah.
beautiful teacher.
Agreed. And even I just want to reiterate in case people are confused, it's very important to feel our emotions and to accept what's going on. But then at a time,
Absolutely.
I don't know each person's time, there's a time to let go and learn and grow from that. And obviously, as we
Sure.
said, every situation is very different. I just thought that was important to add in. But I want to talk about, I guess, from a journey side, because I think you sound, and looking into you, a very, I don't know if you identify it as it, but just the way that you speak, as a highly spiritual person. And
Hmm.
it's always interesting when I know you didn't get raised religious, but you have the half Jewish and the Christian background. Did the spirituality form through that, or was that kind of grown throughout your life and all these lessons that you've learned, and also the artist's journey?
Yeah, no, I have the utmost respect for people's reverie of God, however they see that. Um, that's I'm not a devotee in that way. I wasn't raised. Religion in my house was not something we practiced. I knew my mom's family was Christian, and she kind of we never went to church. My dad's Judaism was almost more of like a cultural information,
Yeah.
only because like my Jewish grandparents lived around the corner from us, and we celebrated all high holidays with them. And there was a lot of history, a lot of recent history that was important about being Jewish, about being accepting of Judaism, about supporting Jewish culture. And I say recent as in like the 1940s were not that long ago. And so, and I liked learning the culture of my family in that way. And it wasn't, it wasn't, it wasn't like satellite. Like, my great grandfather was an Orthodox rabbi. So it was very, very Jewish. And so it was, you know, it's interesting to be that close to that kind of worship. You know, my grandparents didn't go to synagogue, but when my grandfather passed away, my grandmother started going back because it meant something to her. And I think as a kid, for me, seeing those actions meant more about spirituality than me actually like studying the Torah or believing in that. I liked seeing people believe in something. That felt really magical to me. And seeing people inspired by things felt very magical to me. I also just, I used to lucid dream a lot as a kid.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and I didn't even know when I was a kid that that was like a thing. I was just like, yeah, aren't you all doing choose your own adventure when you sleep? And people were like, no, I'm not. And I was like, oh, okay. I've always felt like there's something greater, something bigger, whether that's like the people we love spiritually as spirits coming back to us, whether we're being looked at by Mother Earth, by, you know, whatever it is, it's mine and it's personal. And it's like, I've written that book for myself. Not that I'm not willing to share, but just that it's no one else's like script of that. And I've practiced a lot of yoga in my life, and I meditate. I'm a Vedic meditator, and I don't know, tapping into those moments of stillness and silence. I feel like we learn a lot about ourselves, more so than we can learn from inputting from something outside of ourselves.
Okay, we're adding it to your book. That is so. What is the Vedic? I think my grandmother did Vedic meditation. What is that?
Oh yeah.
I didn't get to talk to her about it. She passed like basically while I was born. But I'm very intrigued by it.
Yeah. So, well, it's actually really big in Australia. And my teacher's teacher lived and taught there for a very long time in Australia. It's transcendental meditation is what it is. It's just called something different, but it's the same practice in that you receive a mantra from a teacher, and which you're not allowed to say to anyone ever. And then you meditate twice a day for 20 minutes as best you can, just with that mantra. And it's a pretty powerful practice. And it's another version of meditation you kind of can't do wrong. You know, like if you miss one, if you mess up, if you fall off the wagon and you get back on, no one's slapping your wrist. It's really up to you as to how much time you want to give to that. And it has calmed and quieted my incredibly quickly paced brain. And it is in new motherhood, it's been very useful as well, because it's very restful. So I feel, you know, when I'm sleep deprived, as I am now and probably will be for the rest of my life, it's a great practice in that way.
Or at least for the next few years. Someone said on the podcast, I love meditation. I've been doing it for like 8 years. I think it's the greatest thing in the world, but I love it when people like you bring it up because people are sick of me talking about how amazing it is. But someone said like 20 minutes of a solid meditation is actually like a few hours of sleep. I don't know where they read that, but you know, when I wake up exhausted, I haven't had a good sleep, first thing I do is I meditate and I feel so much better. And I notice I've only ever missed in like the last, I think that's 7 or 8 years. I think I've only missed meditating like 5 days. And on those 5 days, I'm like, I'm definitely not as present or grounded.
Yeah. I mean, that's the proof, right? Is like the experience.
But from, you know, we could talk about this also for 100 hours. I've spoken about this on my podcast that, and I don't want people to expect that you'll be given gifts or whatever you want to call it, but I think I've written maybe 5 screenplays from meditation. And from someone that, you know, I was just meditating to see what it was, and it took me like a few years, but, you know, closing your eyes, you can just access parts of your brain that you didn't know existed. And you can just kind of like dive into, you can deal with traumas, emotional stuff, things pop up, and you can see kind of from that outside perspective. To me, it's therapy on steroids without the negative connotation times 1,000. And it's completely changed my life. And it's changed a lot of the people in my family or friends' life. And it makes life so much easier. And I'm always so surprised why it's not spoken about as much. That's like one of the things that I like to get out, is to show that people can do it. And I'm sure you've received this a lot. I know that I probably was this person, like, oh, what meditation do you do? Oh, do you use an app, or do you do this and this? So there can be a lot of like judgment side of, this is the right way to meditate. But there's so many different ways to meditate. Yeah, I could see you nodding. Have you had a lot of people like, oh, that's not how you do it, or you have to do it this way?
No, it's funny. This question came up when I went to India in 2019 for a retreat with Tom Knowles, who's my teacher's teacher. And this question was brought to him a lot, like, well, how do we get people to do this meditation? That's the right meditation. And it's not. There's no right? Like, I think he equated it to, and I don't want to speak for him or anything, but he equated it to like, if you know that oatmeal is good for you, good for your heart, who cares if you're eating like Steel Cut or Cheerios? Does it really matter? Like, you're eating the oatmeal. So if you know that meditation, and I've practiced tons of different types of meditation in yoga classes, there's all these ways. You find the one that works for you, and maybe an app and 5 minutes a day in your car before you go into the office is what you can do. And so that's what you do. And that's awesome. Like, there's no judgment in that. That's the beauty of it, is that you need to, it's really a practice of showing up for yourself, and giving yourself that time. And now we're all privy to this, right? We're all addicted to our phones. We're all like, our attention spans are turning into like 3-minute clips, if that 30-second clips. The ability to just slow things down for a minute and give ourselves that time is becoming ever more important.
That's so interesting. So where did you, from the yoga side, I'm getting into it. It's something that I have been slack with for me, but there's also a lot of research in the sense where you can actually, I think there was a Harvard professor that came out with a huge study, I just can't remember it, where you can actually release emotional trauma through yoga, and because you're holding the emotions in our body. And that to me is also, but I barely do it, so I don't want anyone to think I'm a yogi. Oh my goodness, you can tell that I'm not one. But also in terms of the
you are. You don't know it, but you are.
Stop it. In terms of, not only are we feeling more present in our body and we're stretching, but also to release emotional stuff. And I know that I've been doing yoga, for example, and I've been noticing a lot of emotional stuff come out, and I feel like a huge release. And that's something I never thought that yoga was about. I thought it was just about stretching and feeling good in the body, which is amazing. And if people can achieve that, it's an amazing thing. So is yoga and meditations, did someone give it to you, or did you just kind of stumble upon it? How did you kind of discover it?
I went to a conservatory when I was a junior in high school, so 17, at Northwestern University. And that was the first time I really did yoga. There was a teacher there that was teaching us stuff. And at the time I was an athlete. I played a lot of like sports. And so I think some people are very physical, right? And so like what brought me into spirituality was yoga first, because I need to move and do things or I like kind of lose my brain. You probably don't seem that anxious, which is why you went to meditation first, which is great. Great for you. So that's when I was introduced to it, but it wasn't really until I broke my back when I was about 24. I bottomed out a trampoline. I was playing around. Yeah, I know, like, skin crawl. But
wow.
I was doing like bum drops, right? Where like your bum hits the trampoline, your feet, and your bum and your feet. And then there were 3 of us on it, and we were double bouncing each other. And it just so happened that when I landed on my bum, it hit the cement underneath the trampoline. And I suffered a compression fracture in my first lumbar vertebra. And I am lucky I'm walking, to be honest with you. And I had to go in an ambulance to the hospital, and, I felt like a real nerd. And the doctor basically said, like, you probably won't run again. You'll never ride horses again. You'll never do anything that has like, impact on your spine. they were wrong. I do all those things.
Nice.
But what really saved me was a very consistent yoga practice, because it was a way to strengthen my body without impact at first and to get all of the things working again. And then honestly, yoga is like a drug for me. I feel so much better no matter what the class is, whether it's a yin class or like a super high intense class. I always feel better. And it's something that if you just keep, I had a great yoga teacher in college say, like, if you do the same thing every single day, you'll learn something about yourself. And it's not, you don't have to be better every day. It's just that consistency of showing up for yourself, whether that's meditation, whether that's yoga, whether that's journaling for 5 minutes when you wake up, whether it's drinking an entire glass of water. Like whatever the thing is, it's kind of keeping a deal with yourself. But physically, yoga has done that for me. And man, it's just so fun when you actually can do a headstand too. But our bodies hold trauma. We hold things. We're cellular beings, and our cells have memories. And so it's not surprising that you can, you might hear a yoga teacher say in pigeon pose, like when you're opening your hips, like there might be a lot of emotion here. We're all so tight. We're sitting in chairs and we're looking at computers and we're like clenching. Also, no one wants to talk about your butt, right? Like, relax your butt. You ever got a massage and they like massage everything but your butt? And I'm like, I get that you want to be respectful and not be weird, but like, also that's one of the biggest muscles in your body. So, stretch it out in a yoga class. But it's a powerful practice.
I studied this, I don't know what the Americans call it, but kinesiology, which looks at belief systems and emotional patterns. It's kind of a blend between the East and the West. And being a stereotypical boy, this is before, I was like, emotions don't play any part in our body. We don't store them. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And then,
we don't even have them.
Yeah. What are the weaknesses? And then, going on a little bit of a journey, then studying kinesiology, and then doing meditation, and then a bit of yoga. It's amazing what we store in ourselves and being able to release, and it's something that we can all do, and it doesn't need to necessarily cost any money as well, because there's also a bit of a culture, which I am a proponent of, like therapy. Go and spend heaps of money with a therapist. But there's also a lot of ways that we can also empower ourselves to release things and also to be more present. We also talk about accountability towards yourself. So it sounds like you're on this path of where you want to be the best that you can, and you keep yourself accountable, but not in a, you didn't do this. It sounds like you've got like this loving, playful relationship with yourself. And that's also, I'm sure it's a journey as well, but that's also.
Yeah, I try.
I need to know about this in terms of like being kind to yourself, because, I'm sure there's ways, but okay, cool.
I'm the hardest on myself
really?
of anyone.
That way.
Yeah, real hard. I know it's a lot of work. I've done a lot of work. Nice. But it's a constant thing to have to forgive yourself, to be easy on yourself. I wish I treated myself the way that I treat my friends. I had someone once say, like, what would happen if you had a stenographer just like in a courtroom, right? Just like writing down all the shit that goes on in your brain towards yourself. Like, what would that script look like? And for most of us, it's harrowing. For most of it, it's a terrifying script. And so to practice that, look, I went into yoga going like, I'm going to be the best. I'm going to beat everyone. I'm going to get the gold medal at yoga. I'm going to win at yoga. Oh yeah, I'm going to win at yoga. And then, you see this like 95-year-old woman next to you who's just there, like finding the beauty in her limbs and can barely touch her toes. And you're like, oh man, she's actually got it figured out. Cause that's, it's not about like how you perform or the production that how good you are at something, whatever. That's such a movable target. Anyway, where were we? What were we talking about?
It's also interesting with like I've seen heaps of old ladies and like, oh, I can do better than them. And then they might not be able to go as low as you, for example, but it also just shows the competition is not with others, that we can learn from the others, take the positives, and then what we don't like, we don't use. So even an experience
That's right.
like that would be quite a game changer.
That's right. It's also a community.
Yeah.
And I will say, we shoot gemstones in Charleston, South Carolina, a place I'd never been to before going there. And within the first week, I found a yoga shala and am still very good friends with people there. And every season that we go back, they're like, "You're back!" And it's like it's like Cheers. It's like a place where people know my name, and it's nice to have that touchstone, that consistency to go back to, knowing that we're all there just to experience like breathing together.
I want to pigeonhole gemstones for a sec. I want to tie up this point. So in terms of, we all have this. Have you found that, I think you mentioned at the start of the podcast that you do journaling. Has that also helped with how you perceive yourself and maybe the kindness to you?
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Kindness to me. Do you see how fast I got? So I said the S word. I'm so sorry. Again. You see how quickly I got off of the theme of being kind to myself. Yes, I think that writing things down, look, a scientist or a biologist will tell you this, that there's something about pen to paper, writing, not unlike there's something about chanting and vibration, singing, that does something different to your body, to your brain, and the way we process. It's not the same thing if we type it. It's not even the same thing if we speak it. And I have probably like a small library full of my thoughts that hopefully no one will ever read, unless I'm dead. And it just helps. I rarely even go back and look at it, even though I know it's there and I could. But it's just a way to process things. I think Brene calls it like your first shitty draft.
Brene Brown?
Brene Brown, yeah. Sorry, on a first name basis.
No,
yes, Brene Brown. No, I would love to meet her. I've never met her.
I want to get her on the podcast. I want to put it out there.
Dude, let's do it. Let's manifest that right now.
We can get you as on the side as well. You can be my co-host for the episode.
Great. I'm in.
That sounds amazing. So have you noticed, like, from the journaling sides, I don't actually, I have, but I've seen my friends do it. And for them putting the anger and the rage and some of these thoughts or confusion, once they put it out there, they're able to quickly release whatever's going through in their mind. I would imagine
it can do. Yes, go ahead.
No, you go on.
Yeah, no, I was just saying there's that side of it, right? Like you can get out your shitty first draft, you can write a letter. I've written letters to people who've passed away. I've written letters to people that I've never sent them and would never show them. But there's also the other side of it in that it can be a tool to help you manifest the things that you do want, and get really clear about what your values are, about what you want to bring into your life. It's another way to get it out there, to write down not just your plan. Like I always get when people say like, what's your 2-year plan? What's your 5-year plan? Like, I have no fucking idea. I don't know what next week's going to look like, but like I can talk about, I don't know what, or I don't know like where or when, but I know what and I know why, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I think it's a good practice to get out your anger, to get out your rage, to get out your frustration. But just like we were talking about before, if that's all you're writing about, it might start to seep into your life, versus if you can balance that with also writing down the things you're grateful for, writing down the things that are working, writing down your values for a job, for your relationship, for yourself. And then you're holding yourself accountable to that as well. And you can sort of see it. And because someone might say like, do you know what you want in life? And you'll be like, yeah, I know what I want. And then they're like, what do you want? And you're like, oh, fucking Sunday. I want like, and so like when you have to take, when you have to take the time to actually write it down, and then you might write it down and go like, I don't really want that. Like, that doesn't actually resonate with me. Because, our brains are weird, man. Our brains can do real weird things.
Agree.
But when we because writing is slow, right? It's a slowed down version of thinking. So, and I don't think everyone should, I don't want to should on anyone, right? That's not the purpose of any of this, but these are just all tools that you can do to slow down, to remember thyself.
We'll have to talk about this another time because there's so much we can dive into. Dan Fogler, I don't know if you know
Great.
who he is, but he was in the Fantastic Beasts movie, and he spoke about more recently about how he manifested his perfect wife in terms of he was very clear of what he wanted. He said this on the podcast, so I can bring it up. Very clear of what he wanted. He talked about gratitude as well. He also talked about it from a career perspective of how he wanted a big franchise and certain things that he wanted, and he was very clear. And then Fantastic Beasts came, and he's been in all the latest movies. And he said that, it sounds like he's a bit of a master, but more what I understood from that, especially for people that think it's a weird concept, he was very clear of what he likes and what he doesn't like. And he was able to hone in of what he wants in his career and his life. And he was also clear on what he doesn't like. And then he was also able to, he talked about gratitude. And I found that so empowering because it's not like, I want car, give me car. It's what does that car represent? What does it feel like? And it's crazy stuff that when we're clear, what can come to us.
Absolutely. And like emotion and acting class, like we were talking about before, it changes. So you have to stay present with it.
Yes.
It's not something you can just write when you're 20 and then wait for your life to unfold. It's something you have to stay consistent with because your wants change, hopefully.
Agreed.
If you're evolving.
Okay, so we could talk about this for a long time. I love the concept, but also I want to talk about Gemstone, and this was a crazy story to hear. I've just heard snippets, so I'd love you to dive into it. But I believe there's a bit of a journey here, and it will tie in like everything that we're saying. I believe that you got a role for vice principals, and due to timing, you couldn't actually accept that role. And I would imagine, vice principals, I think it was your first comedy of the time, an amazing cast, hilarious show. I've watched quite a bit of it. I would imagine at that time when you're told that you can't do it, that would be hard. Yeah, you're shaking it, heartbreaking. I'd love you to tell me a bit about that experience, so then we'll tie it into the next bit, which you want.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I don't want to repeat myself, so I'll try and be concise. But the show I was on had been canceled by the network we were on. We had an option to get picked up by another network, but that hadn't really happened a lot at that time. That wasn't very common. So I went out auditioning, being completely transparent that I was still under contract with this other show should a different network pick us up. I auditioned for vice principals. I met with Danny. We did a bunch of really fun auditions together and callbacks. I was like, what a dream job. What a dream team. What a great opportunity for me who has not done a comedy in film and television. And then our show did get picked up by Netflix. And it was like, bittersweet because I was so happy the show I was on was going. I was also frustrated that I was losing this opportunity. I tried everything I could to make both work, and it was just not possible at the time. I was heartbroken, very heartbroken, but I went back and I did 3 more years of the show that I was on. I met my now partner, so that was a very positive thing through that experience. I wouldn't have my daughter now if that hadn't happened that way. So, well, I might have a daughter, but it wouldn't be the one I have now, and she's the tits. So, I find all that. At the time, I was devastated, and then hour after that show ended, I get the call for Gemstones, and look, I didn't think I had it. I thought, great, another opportunity. I auditioned. I didn't hear for weeks. I was supposed to go to Bali to go to a yoga retreat. I'd never been to Bali. I always wanted to go. I went. I thought, what if they call me back when I'm in Bali? And I said, the universe has got me. I've got to go to Bali. This was a plan. I go to Bali. I come home 3 days after I return from Bali. I have a test for Gemstones, and everything went forward. And I want to say now in hindsight that you just have to trust the process. But those weeks that I couldn't make it work were awful, and made me feel like, I wanted something to blame. And I think if we can, in those moments, just remember that everything is working for us. It sounds so hippy dippy flippy, and I know in the moment it's so hard to do, but And it's great because Vice Principals was an awesome show, and it would have been incredible to be a part of that team and that particular team in that show. But if we look at it, that show was 2 seasons and it was great, but this show had more opportunity in the long run. So, and this is the character I was supposed to play. So I'm ever grateful that that opportunity came back around in a different and I think better way for me.
Isn't that just crazy to hear? Because to get an opportunity like Vice Principals, you know, you mentioned Danny, and I'm sure there would have been the cast in itself. It sounds like there's a lot of overlap with who they work with. Yeah. And then to not get it, and you're trying your best to make it work, and it's not working. It sounded like also, I don't want to bag any networks or anything, but it sounds from one of the stories I heard that there was a bit of rigidity where it could have potentially have worked, but it was just like, nah, it's going to be too hard or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think it's more that, I don't want to get like too, there's just, had I been a man with more credits, it probably could have worked. I'll say that. Yeah. It wasn't very common to have an up and coming young woman given those opportunities. And there were some just, it was mucky, and I took the high road.
Oh, okay. I like that. And then when you add a situation like that, which is unfair, it's unjust, and 1,000 other things, I won't put words in your mouth, but even I'm hearing that and I'm like, why would they, like, and I'm not you, that, you know, despite all of that, I'm not saying forgive for those reasons. You know, they're not acceptable. We're saying, we're putting that out to the world that we're not going to allow those things to happen.
Well, yeah, they happen. That's the truth of it. Do you know what I mean? And we can either sit there and be a victim and say, like, this isn't fair, or we can, you know, pull up our pants and go to work and show up and be as present as we can be for the thing that we are meant to do. And I also will say in hindsight, and I had a friend that used to tell me this a lot too, if you're trying really hard at something, it's not meant to be. And I wish I could have told that to myself back then. You know, I had to go through all of those things. It just wasn't meant to be. And I was sitting there just pounding and pounding myself, trying to figure it out, trying to bend over backwards, trying to sacrifice myself and my values to make this work. And if you're really trying that hard, like I don't mean to say that you shouldn't work at things. I think it's very good to be hardworking. But when you feel like you are just running into wall after wall after wall, it might be best to just like stop hitting the wall and like take a hard right and not hit the wall, because something else is there for you.
I agree. And it's such, you know, the proof's in the pudding. We can say all the theory in the world, but you had this situation, which, you know, amazing situation on paper. And then unfortunately, depending on how you said, on the victim mindset, where things aren't going to what you want. And then to step away from that experience, you know, you're talking about it with a smile. You've learned some great lessons on yourself. You're still saying that you're putting, you know, boundaries on, you know, maybe certain behaviors or whatever. But yep.
You know who's incredible at this is my co-star, Edie Patterson. Every time that we have an audition, because we help each other put things on tape, we talk to each other about possible jobs and blah blah blah. But she's so good at this. She's like a guru at this. Where when something doesn't happen, whether it's professional or whatever, she's so good at going like, "Nah, wasn't meant to be." Like something better is just down the road. Wow. And that outset, you should talk to her on to where she learned that or how she uses that. But it is, man, it's such a powerful outlook that something better is just around the corner. And better for you, right?
Agreed. And also we'll talk about this, or I'll read about it in your book, but also the victim mentality where despite all of this, you come out, you're smiling, you got a better opportunity later on. You got a daughter, you got your partner or husband, and, you know, you're obviously able to put in a lot of like time and effort in time to really like process, and you've come out the other end to be able to enjoy an experience like this. And Well, that's why, when I said there was a nice way to tie in all of your lessons, because a lot of people, especially me, we can say do this or do all the meditation and do all of this. We don't actually apply it in our life. And I know you're very modest, but everything you said is tied in just into an experience like that, because it's a real like kind of game changer. You can go one way and be bitter and angry, or you can step into your power, learn the lessons, say this is kind of what I want and don't want, and go from it. So I just think it's such a nice. It's very empowering to hear, and hopefully, I believe the listeners will gain a lot out of it. A story like that as well. So
I hope so.
I like the accent as well. So before we wrap up,
Yes,
I believe the show's still on air.
it is. Yes.
Each episode still.
On Father's Day, we premiered with the first 2 episodes, and last Sunday was episode 4. So this Sunday will be
amazing!
episode 5.
I am going to download it for the plane ride. I'm very excited. It looks amazing. I've also heard you talk about it, but you're talking about this show in such a positive light. Like a lot of times when we talk about a show, you might love it or you might like it, but it sounds like you'd love it. And I'd love to hear a little bit about it. I know you could speak about it for ages. I want people to watch this. I want it to get a season 4. I don't know if season 4 has even been announced. I want to get it.
It has not. We don't even know yet, but yeah.
Okay, so I want a season 4. Tell me why, or how it's been such a great experience.
Oh man. Well, first of all, just the gratitude to be able to continuously work through COVID. I think a lot of people, their shows got canceled. They didn't have a show. It's just so hard to work in a time like this. And now we're in the midst of many strikes, possibly 1 strike, maybe 2. It's a touch and go time for Hollywood. But so gratitude that I've been able to work consistently through that. Gratitude. So I want to bring it back full circle to your improv class that you said you could get up there and say anything and they would applaud you. That's what it's like working on this show. I'm surrounded by some of the most hilarious people I've ever met in my life, and all they do is root for me, and that is untouchable in this industry and in life. They're behind you 110%, and that's such a cool feeling, and that trickles down. That starts with Danny, and it trickles down. And Edie has become my nearest and dearest friend. We're just wildly in love, and everyone on that show has each other's back. So aside from the fact that everyone's hilarious and we get to do crazy things, and we're so fortunate to get to make this show and laugh and be together, it's also a group of people that will fight for you, and that's a great feeling.
You couldn't have sold that any better. That is the dream for me. I want to collaborate like that. It's amazing. People can check it out on various platforms. It depends where you are, but in Australia, I think it's on Binge, but most of my audience isn't even in Australia. So where do people find it if they're in America, for example?
HBO Max.
HBO Max. Amazing.
I think it's just, stream on Max.
I've heard so much about this show, so I'm very excited. Before we go, we're going to do the quickest rapid fire segment in the history of the world.
Great.
So the first thing that springs to mind, what are you most proud of?
Giving birth.
I won't comment on them, but a lot of people can talk about different stuff, but you bring it about life, which I love. So that's my only comment. Great answer. Mm-hmm. What's been your special ingredient to work all these years?
Oh God, laughter.
What brings the best creative content out of you?
What's the word I'm trying to think of? Procrastination.
Funniest thing someone has tweeted about you or commented about you, or anything?
Oh man, the funniest thing, like actually funny, or like haha laughable funny?
Well, if you laughed at it, it can be mean and you laugh at it.
I think the funniest thing is that Twitter took away my verification because I didn't tweet enough. I think that's funny. I didn't either, so I just erased it. But yeah.
What would you do if you knew you could not fail?
Oh, become a chef.
Go on.
I love cooking. I absolutely love it. And I think I love feeding people, I guess I should say. I'm not sure I love cooking as much as I love feeding people.
Awesome. Any advice you want to give to people who want to try something different on you, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
Play one dragon at a time.
This is the last question before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you. What is the one question I should have asked you? Look.
Should have asked me. I think you did great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't shit on people. It's disgusting.
I agree. Is there anything that you want to tie up or bring up or yeah?
Oh no, man. I just hope God, I hope anyone listening to this can just have a moment of relief. Whatever you're thinking about, just let it go. We are taught our entire lives to take things on, to tense up, to bear it, to grin and bear it, whatever name you want to put it, you give to it. Just learn to let go. Have a good cry. Just go scream into a pillow or off a mountaintop. I hope you can all do that. If you're in your car by yourself, scream in your car. I do that a lot. But I just want people to feel relief and feel joy. That's what I want.
And the proof's in the pudding, because you've been smiling the whole way as you've been relaying these messages. The proof's in the pudding. You're very authentic. Before we go, how can people follow you and keep up to date with you?
Yeah, I only use Instagram, and my tag is not my name. It's Hatface. I've had a lot of questions about that. I didn't know that this platform would become what it is. I thought it was a place to share photographs, and so I thought I'd be cheeky. And now I can't backpedal out of that one. My mother said I had a face for hats, so it's
Is that a
Hatface.
compliment or?
No, it is. She'd get real mad at me. She'd be like, "Why does every hat look good on you?"
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah.
Amazing. You are super empowering, very authentic. You're the reason I do this podcast. Thank you so much. And we'll have to do it again sometime in the future.
You got it.
I love the example Cassidy gave when the British executive said, "They will know within 15 seconds whether you're the right person for the role." While others would be intimidated, Cassidy knew that by being authentic and herself, she would overcome the pressure and thrive. This resonates really strongly for me because oftentimes in life, we may not necessarily be in alignment with our inner selves because we think we need to impress. Cassidy proves that the best thing we can do is remain true to ourselves while also looking to actively grow and improve our skills. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. If you are your authentic self, you have no competition. Anonymous. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.